Hi, and welcome to Danny After Dark. If you're new here, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss a notification or a new episode. Tonight, I'll be doing another live case review. In tonight's episode will be the murder of comedian Phil Hartman. This has been a case that has been on my list that I've wanted to cover for quite some time. And somebody also recently suggested it. So I figured perfect time to just cover this case because, again, I've been really wanting to do that. So as people kind of trickle in for the evening, just a few administrative stuff and updates to get out of the way. So as a reminder, I will be at the True Crime Podcast Festival this July. So that's literally next month, which is so exciting. And that will be here in Massachusetts. So if you are in the area and you are into true crime, definitely check it out. You can get a discount with my code DANI20. That's DANI 20. And if you do not want to get a full weekend pass, they do have day passes. And that day pass is only for the Saturday. And it's the weekend of July 18th. So definitely check it out because especially if you're in this area and you're into true crime, it's definitely worth going to. Or if you're not in the area and want to make a trip to come out, what better time than to do so for the convention? So definitely check that out. Also, as always, I have all the website, social media stuff for my channel linked in the description bar. So if you're not following me on Instagram, on TikTok, on Facebook, definitely do that. The links again are down below, as well as other websites are down below, like the Cameo, the merch store, buy me a coffee link, so on and so forth. So check that out. So for anybody that missed it, I posted a bunch of shorts today on the YouTube page. I took the day off work and went down to the courthouse for the Karen retrial. So definitely check all those out. If you missed it, I also did post with a bunch of pictures. I also posted all that over on the Instagram page and then a bunch over on Facebook too. So check that out if you missed it. I'll talk more about that this weekend for the True Crime and Chill. Also, the Danny After Dark Book Club. If you are doing the book review, we did vote on a book for the June selection, and it is Living with a Serial Killer, Delia Balmer, My Story. So I will be doing a live review of that the last Thursday of this month, and I will be doing that with whoever wants to come on camera and do the book review as well. The more, the merrier. Or if you just kind of want to hang out in the chat, or not even that, just kind of stick in the shadows, read the book and follow along, feel free to do so as well. Now that we got that out of the way, let's see who is here tonight, and then we'll get started with the case review. Hi, PJ. Good to see you. Capone, I knew somebody was going to comment. I was running a little bit behind. I didn't expect it to be you, though, but good to see you. Chappie Kino, aka Tish. I love the aka. I love Phil Hartman. Happy surprise. Oh, awesome. I know. Phil Hartman, such a loss. Like his gift of comedy, such a loss. So yeah, I look forward to discussing this. I hope you enjoy. James Watson. Hello. Let's see. You may remember me from such lame podcasts as the Paulcast. You know what? I wish I saw that earlier because I would have used that as part of my intro. Missed opportunity. I'm sorry, where's that happening? The True Crime Podcast Festival. If that's what you're referring to, it is in Danvers. So if you go on the True Crime Podcast Festival, either website or Facebook page or Instagram page, they have it as Boston, Massachusetts, but it's just a town a little bit north of Boston. So it will be in Danvers, Massachusetts, which is still a very quiet town, easy to get to. Or I describe it as a quiet town because I'm from here. I'm not sure others who are visiting might say so. Depending on where you live, you might feel it's quite a busy town, but that's where that will be. But definitely check it out if that's something you're interested in. And if you do end up going, let me know. Oh my gosh, let me know. That would be amazing. K-Dog, hello. Yes, I know. I saw that. Oh man. Right. Absolutely. Karen Diamond, lovely seeing you. Hope you and your cats are well. Much love. Thank you. I'm doing well. Cats are all doing amazing. So thank you. Okay, awesome. Danvers is where they burned the witch. Oh my gosh, Tish, I was just having a conversation with somebody about that this past weekend where, everybody thinks the Salem witch trials occurred in just Salem, but that's not the case. It, kind of spans like Salem, Beverly, Danvers, but mostly Danvers. And then Danvers has really tried to take a step back to be like, no, go to Salem, which is so funny. But yep, pretty much. Yeah, you're spot on. Hey, Wolf. Cool subject matter. Phil Hartman. Saw some of your short videos today. Good stuff. Thank you. It was raining. It was such miserable weather, but I'm like, I'm staying outside. We were out there the whole time. What's a Paulcast? You know what, K-Dog? I don't have that answer. It's been 5 years since I think we started that. And I don't know, 4 years since we started that. And I still don't know. The Salem Watson Charles. I think that's a good description. Traffic is nuts over there. In Salem, yes. Danvers, not so much because again, they've really separated themselves. But yeah, the Danvers location where the True Crime Podcast Festival will be much, much easier to kind of get to. So, okay. So why don't we go ahead and jump on in? So Phil Hartman, he was born Philip Edward Hartman on September 24th, 1948 in Brantford, Ontario, Canada. His parents were Doris Marguerite and Rupert Hartman. Phil was the 4th of 8 children in a Catholic household. When Phil was 10 years old, his family moved to the United States. They didn't necessarily settle in one place. However, the family initially moved to Maine, then Connecticut, before they eventually settled on residing in the West Coast, or on the West Coast. In school, Phil was known to his teachers and fellow students as being a bit of a class clown. He was always quick with a joke. Phil's college education, kind of like in regards to where he grew up as a child, was a bit of a mixed variety. He initially started college at the Santa Monica City College, but ended up dropping out. He went back to school at California State University studying graphic arts. Phil then went on to open and operate a graphic art business. He is most known for his graphic artwork of designing album covers for bands. One example is Poco and America's Most Memorable. Phil also created artwork for a small band. You might have heard of them. Crosby, Stills, and Nash. Ring a bell? In 1970, Phil married Gretchen Lewis. However, the couple soon divorced after, only in 1972. Phil started to take comedy classes with an improv group. He ended up joining the group known as the Groundlings and started to perform. It was with this group that Phil met Paul Rubens. They became close friends. When Paul became known as, where most people know, Pee Wee Herman, Phil, he was a part of that show, playing the character Captain Carl. In 1982, Phil married for the second time to Lisa Strain. However, they also ended in divorce after 3 years of marriage. Phil continued to work in the acting field, getting more roles. These included roles like Jumpin' Jack Flash, Three Amigos, The Smurfs, Dennis the Menace, in The 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo, just to name a few. Bigger roles were on the horizon for Phil. In 1986, Phil auditioned and joined the cast of a show you might have heard of, Saturday Night Live. His fellow cast members that season are names you might have heard of: Dana Carvey, Dennis Miller, Nora Dunn, A. Whitney Brown, Jan Hooks, Victoria Jackson, and Kevin Nielsen. In 1987, Phil would marry for a third time, his wife being the former model and aspiring actress, Bryn Omdahl. The couple would end up having 2 children, a son named Sean and a daughter named Bergen. Now, Phil would go on to work on Saturday Night Live for 8 seasons. In that time, he performed, get this, over 70 different characters. While there, Phil had a nickname amongst the cast and crew. They called him Glue. As Lorne Michaels, SNL creator, would say, quote, "He kind of held the show together. He gave to everybody and demanded very little. He was very low maintenance," end quote. Phil was not only recognized by his fellow cast and crew, but also the industry as a whole. Phil would go on to win several awards for his work on SNL, including in 1989, the Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Writing for a Variety, Music, or Comedy Program. In 1994, Phil would go on to leave SNL. He, in 1995, joined the cast of News Radio. He played the role of Bill McNeil, the news anchor. Another role that Phil did was on The Simpsons. He appeared in 52 episodes, doing voices for several characters. The one that he's probably most known for was Troy McClure. While Phil's professional life was at an all-time high point, his relationship with his wife, Bryn, at that time, however, was at an ultimate low. Now, before I continue on, let's take a brief pause and see where you guys are in the chat. And if you guys so far have any comments or questions on this case, please, please, please leave them in the chat or in the comments if you are watching on replay. So let's see. Capone says, "I thought Phil was normal, not Canadian." I'm going to have to reconsider how I think about Andy Dick now. We will get to Andy Dick. We will be getting to him. But did you even know that he was Canadian? I'm not sure by your comment. K-Dog says he had great SNL characters. Oh my gosh. Absolutely. Absolutely. Phil Hartman is one of those people that when you just think of all time, like the greats who came from SNL, like he's one of those. Like for me, I would say top 5 easily. Super talented. So absolutely, K-Dog, completely agree. All the great comedians are Canadian. Mike Myers doesn't count. James, you are so shady. You are so shady. I love it. And I'm actually waiting for you to like throw a Paulcast joke in there because he's Canadian too. I'm just like waiting for it. Well, yes, we have definitely heard of that. You need a license to go interactive. Hi, Kane. Welcome. No, I thought he was normal. Danny. Oh, gotcha, Capone. Gotcha. Hi, William Eddy. Hello. One of the best Bill Clinton impersonations ever. Absolutely. When I was doing the research for this, there was a lot of videos that would come up for Phil Hartman on YouTube. That was like the most common one that just kept popping up. So yes, so good. So good. He would have called James Watson sassy. I bet he would. Hey, Auntie Mimi. Hello. Good to see you. How are you doing? You know what, James? That's a very literal twist. Very literal twist. Chappie, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Chappie, aka Tish, really. Andy Dick's short-lived TV show was hysterical. He's a train wreck. Very well said. Very, very well said. I know you're jealous, Auntie Mimi. Auntie Mimi is an Alan Jackson fan from the Karen Reed trial. We'll talk about that later this week. But I know Auntie Mimi coming in hot. So back to Phil. Again, career at an all-time high. However, his personal life in regards to his marriage, not so much. So Phil and Bryn had a variety of issues that would lead to a lot of tension and also a lot of fighting. One of those issues was that Bryn was frustrated by her husband's success. On the one hand, being a supportive spouse, but on the other, she had put her career of acting and modeling on hold, on the back burner, to be a wife and, most importantly, in regards to raising their two kids. Phil and his second wife, Lisa, were also continuing to be good friends. Long after they divorced, they just stayed close. That didn't necessarily sit well with Bryn. She had a lot of anger and a lot of resentment toward Lisa and Phil because of that. Bryn was also battling, most notably, for addictions, specifically to alcohol and cocaine. She had gone to rehab several times to try to get clean and sober. However, it seemed she would always turn back to alcohol and cocaine. In regards to Andy Dick, one of you mentioned him earlier. Yes, he is a part of this in regards to one of the times that Bryn was on the path to being sober and clean. There was a holiday Christmas party, and Andy Dick had given Bryn cocaine at that Christmas party, and that was in 1997. Bryn, again, a recovering addict, that was one of the reasons that she started to use again. And Andy Dick got, after the fact and after everything that happened, which we'll talk through, he got a lot of shit for that, a lot of shit throughout the community. And I feel that's one of those things where he has talked about it in several interviews, that he got a lot of hell for, at one of the points when Bryn was sober, offering her cocaine at this party, and then she started using it again. And again, Bryn made a choice to continue, to take him up on that offer and to use it. And I know that's a whole conversation in itself, that you could look at it a variety of ways. But Andy Dick has addressed that in several interviews, that he got a lot of hell in his community for offering her cocaine back in 1997 at that party. So jumping back. So on May 28th, 1998, Phil and Bryn got into one of their, what came to be known as, very frequent arguments. Phil decided just to go to sleep for the night. Bryn then obtained one of the guns that the couple owned and shot Phil while he slept. She shot him 3 separate times with a .38 handgun, twice in the head and once in the right side. All of the shots fired were at close range. Phil died instantly. After shooting Phil, Bryn called her friend Ron Douglas. She was hysterical. He told her, just go back to sleep. He didn't know what had just happened. Bryn, however, showed up at Ron's house completely unannounced. She told Ron that she had just killed her husband, Phil. She even showed him the gun that she had used. However, Ron, he did not believe Bryn. He did agree, however, to go back to the house with her. He would follow her in his car. Keep in mind that Phil and Bryn's children were still at home. They were asleep. So now Phil and Bryn arrive at the Hartman residence. Upon arriving, Ron goes into the home, goes up to the bedroom, and he discovers Phil dead in bed. Ron immediately calls the police. While he was on the phone with police, Bryn locked herself in the bedroom with Phil. When police arrived to the Hartman home and officers came and started to enter, they heard a gunshot. Ultimately, Bryn had committed suicide by shooting herself in the mouth while she laid in bed next to Phil. So, actor and comedian Phil Hartman was now dead at the age of 49, as well as his wife, Bryn, dead of suicide. After the autopsies were performed on both Phil and Bryn, Bryn's autopsy became quite a topic of discussion for a variety of reasons. I will kind of go into the gist of why that was, but because of, and we think back to how much we know much more now than we did back then about antidepressants, we could probably do an entire episode of how antidepressants work, how antidepressants, coincide when there's other substances at use, whether it's alcohol, cocaine, so on and so forth. But just for keeping it simple, we'll just go over the gist of it. So Bryn's autopsy had showed that she had alcohol, cocaine, and an antidepressant Zoloft in her system on the night of the murder-suicide. After the deaths of Phil and Bryn, a lawsuit was filed by the executor of their estate on behalf of the kids. The Los Angeles Superior Court lawsuit was filed by Bryn's brother. The lawsuit had accused Dr. Arthur Zarowski of medical malpractice. According to the court papers, Dr. Zarowski gave Bryn Hartman a manufacturer's sample of Zoloft on March 26, 1998. That was 2 months before the murder-suicide had occurred. The lawsuit claimed that Dr. Zarowski did not give Bryn a physical examination or note her medical history in, quote, she did not have the traditional doctor-patient relationship, end quote, that he had with his other clients. Most notably in the lawsuit, it alleged that Pfizer downplayed the antidepressant Zoloft's potential side effects. Some of these side effects included violence or suicide in some people. Now, again, this was back in the late 1990s. Things have changed so much in regards to the medical community, and especially in regards to listing side effects. I think nowadays we're also just kind of used to going to the pharmacy, and when you pick up a prescription, there's, if not a page, maybe 2 pages of potential side effects listed. That wasn't the case back in the late 90s. So that's something to keep in mind. So before I continue, let's take a quick peek at the chat. Kind of leave it at a cliffhanger, if you will. Let's see. Andy Dick was recently, came up on Cameo recently. Oh, that's wild. I did not know that. I have no idea what you're referring to, Capone. The hate that he loved his wife so much to ignore the warnings. That, I mean, yeah, William Eddy, one of the things in regards to Phil when I was doing the research was there seemed to be a bit of an overall theme with all of his relationships where they were super intense at first. And then kind of once he settled in, it was just kind of more complacent, that it was just didn't necessarily put in the work as one should. And his relationships would kind of fizzle out very quickly that way. And we, as I discussed the lengths of each of the marriages that he had, that kind of makes sense. But yeah, absolutely. In regards to going a little bit deeper with your comment, I see exactly what you mean. And again, it's always, even, other family, close friends that, looking back, kind of hindsight 2020 with, when Bryn started taking the antidepressants and how maybe her mood and how her mental health would have changed. It's kind of easier to look back now and see that for those who were close to her. Let's see. Okay, just making sure I'm caught up in the chat. So again, with Phil and Bryn now being both deceased, they still left their children behind. Sean was, at the time of the murder-suicide, he was 9 years old, and the daughter, Virgin, was only 6 years old. So we are in 2025. Phil has been gone now for almost 30 years. When I kind of was realizing that it's on the one hand, it doesn't feel like it's been that long, but when you look at the date, and it's like, wow, 30 years have passed. But with that being said, in the last 30 years that he's been gone, he has not been forgotten. One, by the comedy community, who just still respects and loves the work that he did during his career. It's just one of those type of performers that stands the test of time. But most importantly, he has not been forgotten by those who knew him well. In 2023, fellow co-stars and friends of his, Dana Carvey and David Spade, spoke about Phil to People magazine. They said, quote, "Everyone remembers how great he was. He could be the game show host or the lead, or he could do one of those thankless parts, like the elevator man or the dad, or just come through with the extra laughs. You could give him unfrozen caveman lawyer, which is such a weird part, and then you'd watch him do it and be so weirdly hysterical," end quote. They would also say in this interview, quote, "His range was extraordinary. That's why he was called the glue," end quote. Another thing that they had said, and more so that I want to end this episode on, was, quote, "Phil wasn't a show business person at all. He was fascinating. His brain was so big, and he just had such a broad spectrum of intellect. He left such a great body of work behind, and that can always be revisited," end quote. That is the case of the murder of comedian and actor Phil Hartman. So, thank you for sticking around for this episode of Danny After Dark. Do any of you, I know we're doing this live, have any last minute questions or comments, or even just things that you want to say, that what you most remember Phil Hartman for? And if you're watching on replay, you weren't able to make this live, please leave a comment below. There's such an overwhelming body of performances that Phil has done that there's just something for everybody over his career, that we all just kind of have that, I remember that, and I still laugh at that when I see that type of moment. Let's see. So Chappie Kino says, after getting married, this is just going back to earlier conversation, after getting married, allegedly Phil would, quote, shut down, end quote, and become emotionally unavailable. Well said. Absolutely. Well said. That was, yeah, spot on. Spot on. So apparently John Lovitz beat up Andy Dick twice, once at a comedy club, and then he slammed his head into the bar at a restaurant another time. I have heard about some of the feuds that they've gotten. But with that being said, and I'm not bashing anybody, there have been a lot of feuds that Andy Dick has been in over the years. But in regards to kind of tying this into Phil Hartman's case, yes, absolutely. Thanks, Danny. I loved his retentive chef in Frankenstein. Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, James Watson, you are so shady. You are just so shady. And you know what? I'm here for it. Absolutely love it. All right, everyone. Yeah, you two can go back and forth. All good. All good. So thank you everybody for joining me for this episode again of Danny After Dark. If you are not subscribed, please make sure to do so you don't miss any notifications or new episodes. And give this episode a like. Reminder, later in the week will be the True Crime and Chill. Things have been very busy on my end, and that has been a little bit on the back burner for the past couple of weeks, but back on track. So stay tuned for that later this week. So have a good evening, everybody, a great rest of your week. And remember, until next time, we don't live in darkness. Darkness lives in us. Bye, everyone.